Hi, my name's Kim. It's January and I filmed my 20-ish books that I'm reading in 2026 at the end of December, and somehow in the past week I seem to have seen an influx of even more 2026 releases that I'm really interested in. So I thought what I would do is do one of the anticipated books in 2026 videos. I really enjoy watching other people do these because I'm always interested to see what other people have on the TBR, and normally it helps me find some books as well that I'm interested in. So I'm taking you through, I think it's 18 books that I'm hoping at some point that I'll get to read in the future. These are mostly fantasy with a little bit of horror and sci-fi thrown in there as well, and there's a theme throughout these of things that are very much me that I'm interested in. So let's get started. In January we have Sisterwake by Dave Rudden. The thing that stood out to me the most about this is the blurbs. Ryan Rose, who is the author of 7 Recipes for Revolution I read last year, said 200-foot kaiju gods, necromancy and anti-colonial rebellion. What more could you ask for? And if you know anything about me, 200-foot kaiju gods is absolutely a buzzword that would get me interested in a book. In this book, the gods suddenly return. We follow a character called Sisterwake, who is the saint of the goddess of death, unwilling saint of the goddess of death I should say, and it seems to be focused on fighting back against the colonial rule that this group of islands has been forced under. It's described as a lush epic fantasy with rebellion, intrigue, horror, gigantic dangerous gods and Celtic mythology, perfect for fans of James Arlington, John Gwynne and Joe Abercrombie. 2 of 3 of those authors I've read books from and enjoyed, so I felt like that probably is one that I would enjoy too. Then in February we have Greedy by Kali Kazumi. This one is described as a deliciously dark thriller set in remote Japan, where a desperate gambling addict masquerades as a private chef to a reclusive billionaire with deadly taste. There are quite a few books to do with food and cooking, and I haven't actually picked up many of them. The only one that really comes to mind is Tender as Flesh, which obviously has a more cannibalistic element to it, and there are no giveaways in this description. It does say at the end that it's an ode to Japanese cuisine, horror-tinged thriller unsuitable for vegetarians. You do kind of wonder what it is going to be the big reveal. There's definitely been a big wave of food-related books. Futility, Butter, those A Certain Hunger, those are just a few that come to mind, none of which I have read, but they're definitely there in the back of my mind, and I'm wondering how this one is going to fare. Next is the Iron Garden Sutra by A.D. Sui. This one is described as Clara Meets the Sun and S.A. Barnes' Dead Silence with a touch of Becky Chambers' A Song for the Wild Bill. And those are such drastic parallels that's one of the things that made me most curious about this. And we follow a death monk called Vessel Iris who works for a team of researchers. They're all on this spaceship and he specifically performs funeral rites for the dead. It ends up being that this lost spaceship reappears, and so they are sent to go along with it to give peace to those who died on this lost spaceship. But strange plant things happened on this ship, and obviously there's more to the ship and its return than meets the eye. Then we have River of Bones and Other Stories by Rebecca Roanhorse. This one comes out in early March. I read The Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse and also its sequel, I forget what it's called at this point, maybe 2 years ago now, and I also read her short story that was in They're Screaming, put together by Jordan Peele. I quite liked all of the work that I've read from her so far, and I know that her other series, I think is it Black Sun, is obviously quite popular as well, and so I would like to pick that up at some point. This short story collection in particular really drew me in because there is a story in here that's related to the Trail of Lightning books. Because it's unlikely, I think, that there's going to be an actual sequel. It'll be nice to go back into that world and read a short story. The Out There Screaming short story as well is also in this collection, and then there's I think 2 or 3 other stories as well, and so I thought it would be nice to just read a bunch of work by Rebecca Roanhorse, and it'll hopefully prompt me to pick up Black Sun at some point this year. On the same day, Green and Deadly Things by Jen Leons comes out. I've read the first book in the Runa King series. I really quite liked it. It was about 2 years ago now, and I didn't know that the footnotes were there because I read it on my Kindle, so I kind of feel like I might have to potentially reread the book or read the rest of the books physically, just because I don't want to miss out on all the footnotes still. And I also read one of her other previous books that came out the other year. I think it's The Sky on Fire, which I didn't enjoy as much. It felt more like, they felt drastically different. There's definitely a lot of comedy in the way that she writes, even in her high fantasy. The Sky on Fire felt more of a romantasy in comparison. This one in particular also has a necromancy / dead people things theme, which quite a few of the books that I've selected for this happen to have. That was an accident. It says, centuries ago, necromancy almost destroyed the world. That's how history remembers it. History remembers it wrong. Strange monsters begin to wake up, and it's up to this group of knights who have been charged with defending the world from necromancy, from figuring out what exactly is going on. It also involves this group called the Grimlords, who are a bunch of undead wizards, and one of them gets to wake up. Then we have The Library of Amorla Falling by Kaylin Josephson. This one caught my eye because it takes place in a library, and I think that libraries are always such unique settings to set books, specifically these big magical libraries that aren't quite what they seem, which is exactly what this book seems to be. We follow a con artist called Kazira, who is essentially being forced to work off her prison sentence by hunting down these magical creatures for this kingdom. She's then sent in to this library because there's some strange things going on. She's meant to basically sneak her way in, pose as the new assistant, and figure out how to get rid of the head librarian. But obviously things are not all as they seem. It does say that the prickly handsome librarian Alistair, whose own monstrous secrets are about to catch up with him, is also involved. So I'm really curious to see what happens there. I do love a book set in a library. Then we have The Geomagician by Jennifer Mandula. This one really makes me think of the Murray Brennan Memoirs of Lady Trent series. We have a character named Mary who wants to be a geomagician. This is a paleontologist who uses fossils to wield magic, and she ends up finding this ancient egg, and the egg hatches a baby pterodactyl. She wants to keep this pterodactyl, but there is a society who want to take possession of it, and so obviously shenanigans ensue. I think this one will be one of the lighter fantasies that gets released this year. I'm just now coming to the end of the Murray Brennan series. I have one more book left to read, and obviously with the end of series like Emily Wilde, books like this that fill that kind of light fantasy kind of space are really interesting to me, so I'm thinking I might put this one up too. Then we have The Subtle Art of Folding Space by John Chu. This one, the cover alone, is one of the things that drew me into it. I think that it just is such a cool looking cover. This one is a science fiction that is set in these kind of multi-universes. It says Ellie's universe and this one is falling apart. Her alien mother is in a coma. Her sister Chris accuses her of being insufficiently Chinese between assassination attempts, and a shadowy cabal of engineers is trying to hijack the Skunk Works, the machinery that keeps the physics of each universe working the way it's supposed to. The story is all about generational trauma, about confronting her mother's legacy, and also potentially reconciling with her sister. I'm not one who normally reads a lot of parallel universe books. I don't know why, it's just something I have a bit of an aversion to, but again, I want to give this one a shot. It's only 240 pages and the cover itself is just too beautiful for me to not at least pick it up and see how I feel about it. Then we have Burn the Sea by Mona Tawari. This one, again, another really striking cover. We have a main character named Abaka who ends up being queen, and there's these monstrous creatures called the Porcugi, who are half giant men, half snakes, who attack from the sea. They haven't been seen in a really long time, and they suddenly make a reappearance. And so Abaka is essentially got to figure out what is going on in the world and stop these giant snake men from colonising her lands. It's described as a lush historical fantasy that reimagines Portuguese attacks on South India in the 1500s and the fierce real-life queen's story as well. Then we have Ode to the Heartbroken by Suzanne Palmer. This one, again, is another cover that's really pretty. It does kind of give the Monk and Robot series vibes, and it does have a robot in it. It says 40 years ago, the world nearly ended. B is an old robot who was there and doesn't want to think about what happened or what role they played in that conflict. They have settled into a life of isolation in the abandoned ruins of an old mill in the former New York Botanical Gardens, disinterested in what's happened in the outside world since they stepped away from the war. Someone out there, though, has not forgotten about them, and when they are attacked, their person vandalised and one of their legs stolen, they set out to find the thief accompanied by a cyborg dog and a human mechanic. It's described as a story about coming to terms with your past, with who you've become, and also who you want to be. I do think it kind of will fit into that Monk and Robot vibe. The early reviews are looking pretty good so far as well, so definitely interested in picking up that one this year if I can. Then we have The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda Lee. I read the Greenbone saga a couple of years ago now. I think maybe it was in 2024, and I really quite liked it. I gave every book that I've read either 5 or 4 stars. I'm not entirely sure if this one is a standalone or whether it's a new series, but I'm really interested in picking up more Fonda Lee to see what else that she writes. This one is a space opera where a corporate samurai fights beneath merciless stars and death is always a mere breath away. I'm really interested in science fiction stories where the science fiction element of it is not your kind of typical spacefaring element. A corporate samurai in space just sounds really cool. We have Asako, who's a legendary swordsman. Her longtime client unexpectedly retires and she plans to follow, but she ends up being tasked to go into this final mission, and that is what we follow in the book. Then we have a novella, Abyss by Nicholas Binge. I haven't read any of Nicholas Binge's other work, but I have seen them pop up over the past couple of years. This one is described as Severance meets Lovecraft. I haven't watched Severance. I know a little bit about it though, and I am a fan of Lovecraftian horrors in my works, so that's part of the reason why I wanted to read this one. And then it also is described as a tale of corporate horror and existential dread, and if there's one thing about me, I love a corporate horror. I love a Lovecraftian corporate horror, so I am interested in this one. It says Joe has always had potential, he doesn't expect much, and he hopes that his new job as an admin assistant won't expect much of him, but when he enters enters the office Kronos, a company he's never heard of and knows nothing about, he discovers that potential is exactly what they want from him. And that's the only description we've got. It's a short description, it's a novella, I feel like it'll be pretty easy to get through. Then we've got Canon by Paige Lewis. I realised I was talking about the dates that these were released and I've completely forgotten, so I'm in May now. This is meant to come out in May. This one is described as two unlikely heroes who embark on quests to win God's favour in this outrageously entertaining, profound, heartfelt novel. I think the cover's really beautiful and the description is kind of tongue-in-cheek. It says, Yara can't comprehend why God has chosen them to slay Dominic, the ruthless leader of the army of bad guys. Cast out by their family and reeling from a destructive relationship, Yara has never felt weaker, but with nothing left to lose, they strike a deal. Abandoning their solitary days of embroidery and obsessed with cleaning, Yara reluctantly embarks on a perilous odyssey designed to prepare them for the daunting mission ahead. And then we have other characters as well. Adrena, a disillusioned prophet with a terrifying secret power, who is determined to become the hero of the story. And so these two people are kind of catapulted together and things are happening. Then we have Mort Dance Peril by R.J. Barker. I will pretty much pick up anything R.J. Barker. I read the entirety of the Ty Child series. I read the first book in the Gods of the Weirdwood series. I have the other two and I really need to read them this year to finish up that series. But when I saw this, I actually saw this announcement a couple of weeks ago, but at the time nothing had been released. The cover hadn't been released, just the title and a little bit of the blurb, and I completely forgot. But then I just saw the actual listing with the cover and everything start to pop up. This one is also released in May, and it says, in a city of ancient automata, strange spirits and sleeping gods, a cleric of death finds his own life on the line. In this vividly imagined fantasy murder mystery, we have a cleric who is tasked with reading the last thoughts of the dead, which gives very much a Paladin's Hope vibes. It says, after reading the corpse of a low-level records keeper, Orides' troubles quickly multiply when his own apprentice is murdered, and all fingers point to him as a suspect. It's described as perfect for fans of the lives of Mora, Foundryside and Winds for the Dead, and so I'm interested in picking this one up for sure. Then we have Muñeca by Cynthia Gomez. This one's meant to come out in June. It's described as a vivid, surreal gothic about a queer Latin working class witch who sets out to rescue a bespelled heiress and loses control of her powers and her heart in the process. This is another cover that's really beautiful. I really love the kind of gothic horrors that have this sort of cover, the kind of that Isabel Cañas style, kind of painted historical vibe. It's just something that really immediately draws you in. And we follow Natalia, who has been hearing rumours about the beautiful Violetta. She is a young heiress to Spanish colonial wealth, but has been left paralysed by a mysterious illness. Natalia knows a thing or two about witchcraft, and she's certain that this is the work of dark magic. She plans to break this spell and manages to become Violetta's caretaker, which then brings up the question of who put this curse on Violetta and why. As feelings between the two bloom into romance, Natty grows more and more reckless and is forced to face her own ghosts, one she hoped would stay gone forever. In July, we have The Sea Hides Its Dead by Megan Bontrager. This one is described as The Descent Meets the Ritual, a cult aquatic horror about a group of academics trapped in a sea cave who must reckon with eldritch horrors as they are forced to atone for their greatest sins. And again, we have a few of my favourite things. The ocean, eldritch horrors, being trapped in a place where you can't get out because there's an eldritch horror after you. I immediately read the description and was like, that one is for me. The first line of the blurb is atone or die, which is very dramatic. We have grad student Caro, who has no idea what she wants to do with her life. She ends up getting an opportunity to act as a research assistant on this anthropological expedition for her professor and lover, Edward Beck. Beck assembles a team of academics and professionals to study the ancient sea-based cult of the Leviathan, and the expedition descends into deep sea caves where the cult are said to have dwelt. One cave entrance collapses and they're trapped inside, and they find out that they're not alone in the darkness. I really want to read this one. I love deep sea horror, so this is one that I need to pick up. Also in July, we have Misery's Wife by Joan Tierney. This one is a queer and clarified reimagining of a Portuguese folktale about a young trans woman who must save her elder sisters from the King of Air, the King of Sea and the King of Misery. That tagline alone really brought me into it, and again, I really like the cover. As you can tell, it's a theme, and it's not necessarily a good theme. There were a couple of books that I read last year that had beautiful covers, but then I didn't enjoy too much. But I'm never not going to pick up a book with a beautiful cover. I need to know if it is a book for me. In this one, we follow our main character. Yeah, elder sisters each picked a flower and will whisk away to marry the King of Air, the King of the Sea and the King of Misery. Our main character, Elixane, receives a mysterious message from a toad, sets out to rescue her sister from the Kingdom of Misery. She's aided by a jester-like Marquis of Luck and his sister Jinx. She'll have to reunite with her sisters, their magical husbands, break several unbreakable curses, and perhaps find a magical love of her own. And then lastly, another book that comes out in July is The Dragon Has Some Complaints by John Wiswell. This one, again, it's the cover. The cover's really pretty, but also I read the description and I was like, yeah, I need to pick that up. It says Garrody was once a four-headed dragon amongst the powerful in Cardosa. After an unfortunate incident, he now has 3 heads, 1 stump, and a daily whirlwind of internal bickering. Centre head wants to rain death upon all humanity. Bottom head is like a feral cat, and upper head is under the delicate delusion that he is in fact a human. The dragon itself sneaks into an elite dragon rider academy, pretending to be tamed to get food and a warm bed, and there's a rider named Rania who is desperate enough for a dragon of her own, who overlooks the fact that he is 3 heads and a stump. The dragon wants to protect Rania from the invaders who killed their 4th head, and of course the academy comes into attack. They must work together to save each other from this conquering force. I have seen that it's based off this meme, which I also think is kind of comical. I read Someone You Can Build a Nest In last year. I really quite liked it, so I am looking to pick this one up because I think John Wiswell is one of those authors I'll definitely be keeping an eye on in the future with his future releases. That brings me to the end of the books that I'm interested in reading this year. I talk about way more in my 20ish books I want to read in 2026. You can watch that video here. I'm looking forward to seeing what other books get released this year. We live in a time where there are just so many good books and not enough time to read them, but hopefully I'll get to at least some of these this year. And if you stick around, you can see how I feel about them.